Okay, guys, welcome to lesson 3 of our critical thinking mini course. What I want to do first is, as always, just check that everything is working okay, and then we can begin. So we begin in just 1 more minute. If you're watching the replay of this, feel free to just skip ahead until we begin. What I want to do first is excellent. So everything's working okay. So we can begin. All right, so what are we going to look at in this lesson? So we will take many of the abstract ideas, so the theory, and put it into practice. So lessons 1 and 2 of this critical thinking course, if you haven't watched those, it's a very good idea to go back and have a look at them because it deals with the theory, the abstract. And it's important when you're learning something new. I think the best way to learn something new is to deal with the theory first and then put it into practice and deal with it on a more practical level. So this lesson is the practical. The first 2 lessons were more the theory. We will focus on one main issue that many of you have, which is developing main ideas. I think that an appreciation of critical thinking can help you with speaking, it can help you with writing in general, it can help you with introductions and conclusions, but I think that the one thing that critical thinking will really help you with is developing your main ideas. And many of you complain about this, and not complain, but talk about that you find this difficult. And we have tried many things, and we have even created a whole mini course on how to develop main ideas, and some of you still find it difficult. And so this is just another approach, another different way of looking at it that might help some people. So instead of stating what we have already said in the past, we will use critical thinking to help you with this. And so just, as I say, another angle of attack, another way of looking at this. This does not mean that our previous lessons are not valid. Our previous lessons on how to develop ideas are very good, they're very helpful, but this is for people who want to understand it from the perspective of critical thinking, and for people who maybe still, no matter what we do or what we say, they still find it difficult. This might be the one thing that helps you out. Just let me check before we continue, just the comments. So if there's 11 people watching, no comments, which must mean everything's working okay. All right, so what we're going to look at is we're going to look at this question. Many working people get little or no exercise either during the working day or in their free time and have health problems as a result. Why do many working people not get enough exercise? What can be done about this problem? Now, this is a question from IELTS 13. IELTS 14 is out now. That's actually coming from Amazon to my postbox today. So I'll share that with you maybe next week. But we're going to focus on this question today to help us put our theory into practice. So what we've taught you in the past is that there are 3 elements of a main body paragraph. And this is still true. This is still valid. But I want to talk about what we've taught you in the past first so you can compare it with how we would think about it in terms of critical thinking. Topic sentence, which is your main idea, your explanation, and your example. So the problem that a lot of people face is they don't understand the difference between your main idea and your explanation. So often people will do 2 things. Number 1, they will repeat the same idea, which is not what an explanation is, or they will just write general background information about the topic, which is not really an explanation, or they will write about something unrelated. So if you write something that is just repeating the main idea, or is just general background information, or is unrelated, then that is not a good explanation. And critical thinking can kind of solve each of these problems because it forces you to think about it in a different way. It also forces you to think about examples in a different way. So we'll look at how that is and then look at it in a little bit more detail. So instead of thinking of your topic sentence as your main idea, think about your topic sentence as your argument. This is what I think. And then your explanation is the reasoning behind your argument. This is the reason why I believe this. And then your example is the evidence to support your argument. So they're all linking up together. This is my argument. These are the reasons for my argument. And this is the evidence to support my argument. I'm going to look at examples and everything. So don't worry if this is not as clear as it could be. Let me see any comments so far. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to pop a comment in below. Let's see. None so far. Okay, we have a few comments. Palmyra, Gagan, Ronak, Nidhi, Yadu. Okay. So let's have a look at some sample topic sentences. So this is our introduction. Many working people get little or no exercise either during the working day or in their free time and have health problems. Sorry, this is our question. Why do many people not get enough exercise? Our introduction. So our introductions would say something like, this is because of a lack of time. That's not our full introduction. It's just to introduce the idea to you guys. And our topic sentence would say something like, we would paraphrase the topic sentence. A hectic lifestyle leaves most working adults with little time for working out. So this is our topic sentence. This is our argument. Okay, this is our main idea. This is our argument. This is our position on this question. Okay, so to answer this question, this is our topic sentence, and this would come in our first main body paragraph. So explanations. Think of explanations as reasons why you believe your main idea and why you think your main idea is correct. So why do you believe it? Why do you think it's correct? Or you could put yourself in someone else's shoes. Why do you think someone else would believe this? Remember that you're providing the reader with a reasoned argument. You're not just stating, as we looked at in lessons 1 and 2, you're not just stating, I think this. You're stating, I think this because, and a reasoned argument about why you think that. And take a look at lesson 2 for the difference between assertions and reason. You cannot simply state a main idea and hope it is developed by writing some random ideas. Remember the purpose of your explanation. Your purpose of your explanation is to provide reasons, not to just write general background information or just repeat the same thing again and again. Why do most people not provide good explanations? They assume the person knows what they mean. So for example, let's say you're writing about the cause of global warming. Often someone will write something like, the cause of global warming is CO2, and they won't provide any explanation or a reasonable explanation because they assume the other person has that knowledge and they don't want to sort of insult the intelligence of that person sometimes. So this also comes from many education systems teach you not to criticize the teacher. And this often leads to A, you not criticizing the teacher, but B, thinking the teacher is this all-powerful, knows everything, and you should never tell them what they already know. So most Western education systems are not like that, but some other education systems are like that. So be careful if you have that bias. They're not used to writing arguments. So when speaking, people can ask you follow-up questions. So when most people, when they're using English, especially when they're learning English, they're not writing that much. What they're doing is they're speaking a lot. So they don't need to provide these reasonable explanations because the person can say things like, what do you mean by that? Is that right? Can you tell me a bit more? Really? And then that will force you to write an explanation or state an explanation. But when you're writing, you're not going to see this. They confuse stating their main idea again with an explanation. This is a big one. A lot of the corrections that we see, a lot of the essays that we see, the problem is that they are just repeating the same thing over and over again rather than explaining it. So what if you get stuck? What if you write your main body paragraph, or you begin to write your main body paragraph, and you write a topic sentence, you write your main idea, and you just can't think of a way to explain it? If someone completely disagreed with you, how would you convince them? So remember, you're making an argument. So if somebody completely disagreed, they don't agree with you whatsoever, how would you convince them that you are correct and they are wrong? Put yourself in someone else's shoes. How would you win this argument? So again, many of you say, I don't know anything about this, or I don't know anything about that topic. Well, that's fair enough. I accept that. But you also have an imagination. And as human beings, we have the ability to think about in a way that other people would think. If you're a man, what would a woman think? If you're an employed person, what would an unemployed person? If you're a young person, what would an old person think? If you are Irish like me, what would an Indian person think? If you're an Indian person, what would a Vietnamese person think? You can always put yourself in someone else's shoes and see things from multiple different angles. And then you will be able to provide reasons and win that argument. So let's have a look at some example explanations and think about if any of these are sufficient, if any of these are effective. A hectic lifestyle leaves most working adults with little time for working out. So this is your topic sentence. This is your main argument. Let's have a look at these reasons. Reason number one, people work more than ever before, meaning they don't have time to work out. Is this a good explanation? Have a little think about it. Have a read of it. Read the topic sentence. Read this one. Is it a good explanation? Let's have a look at the next one. In this modern world, people have little time to work out than ever before. Is this effective? Is this sufficient? And then have a look at this one. Many people work long hours and have many responsibilities other than going to the gym. Is this one good? Well, I would argue that none of them are good. None of them are good because they're basically just repeating the same thing. So this is just a repeat. This is a repeat. This is kind of going some way to maybe explaining why working adults don't have time to work out, but it's not really sufficient. You have to win the argument. So are these better? Imagine if someone completely disagreed with you and said, you're lazy. Why do you not work out? Again, winning the argument. How would you explain this if somebody said to you, you're just lazy. Why do you not work out? You have to explain why a hectic lifestyle means you have no time for working out. You'd have to reasonably explain that. So let's have a look at these and see if these are a little bit better. Most people work from 9 to 5 with only a short lunch break and a long commute on top of this. This leaves them with only a few hours in the evening for things other than work. Often they're so exhausted that free time is spent on more relaxing activities such as watching television or surfing the internet. So most people work 9 to 5 with only a short lunch break and a long commute on top of this. This is explaining why people don't have time. This leaves them with only a few hours in the evening for things other than work. Again, explaining reasonably why people don't have time. Often they're so exhausted that free time is spent on more relaxing activities such as... So this might someone said, so what? What about your free time? Okay, you're exhausted, you're commuting, you're doing all these things, but that's really from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. What about your evenings? So they have reasonably explained, well, in the evenings, I can't study or I can't work out either. So you can see that this is a very, very, very reasonable argument because they have provided reasons, explanations. If someone was arguing with you about this and you said, oh, you do have time to work out, you're just lazy. And they said, actually, I work 9 to 5, I only have a short lunch break, I commute for 2 hours a day. When I get home, I'm so exhausted, all I want to do is just watch TV and surf the internet. If they said that to you, you would say, actually, you're not lazy. You just actually don't have any time. So this is a very, very reasonable argument. You don't have to agree with it. You could disagree with it. You could counter with another explanation or another reason, but it is a very, very reasonable argument. And if they put that in an essay, they would do very, very well. So this is how they have put it into a full paragraph. So they've taken those 3 sentences and they've put them into the paragraph here. They've linked the 2 sentences up into one complex sentence, and we have another 2 complex sentences here. Okay. Examples. Your main ideas and reasons, your explanations are not enough. You must go one step further, of course. The strongest arguments have proof. So even if this person was, imagine again, we're arguing with this person, and the person said all of this and they stopped here, we could say to them, that's a reasonable argument, but do you have proof of this? Or you could be lying to me, you could be making this up. So a example strengthens your argument because it provides proof. Let's have a look at this example. Manchester City are the best team in England. This is an assertion, okay? This is just what someone thinks. This is just their opinion. Then, in the second sentence, they have used reason. They are the best because they have the best players and a world-class coach. Can you give me proof? They finished the league season with 98 points, one more than Liverpool in second. So this in red is an example. Another way to think about it is its proof. Another way to think about it is its evidence, okay? So they have provided their assertion, their position, they have provided the reason, and then they have provided proof. So this is really, really strong. Because imagine that instead of saying this, the person just said, Manchester City are the best team in England. That's how people who don't think critically argue with each other. And then someone else would say, no, I think Liverpool are the best. And someone else would say, no, I think Man United are the best. They're not going to win that argument because none of them are being reasonable. None of them are providing any reason. But when the Manchester City fan says, listen, we finished top of the league, we had 98 points, we had one more than Liverpool, that proves that we are the best team in England. You can't argue with that. You cannot provide a reasonable argument to disprove this because their evidence is so strong. So instead of thinking of examples in terms of a recent study showed that 98% of it, try and think of real evidence that proves your point. So example 1. For example, recent research concluded that 71% of people who cancel their gym membership stated too tired as the primary reason. So if you can't think of real proof, if you can't think of a real example, you could make it up, but make sure that it makes sense. Here's another one. For example, a recent study found that the average person spends 5 hours per day on their mobile device or looking at a TV screen. That's actually a real study. That's one that I seen the other day. And that proves that people don't have time to work out because they're too tired and they just sit on their phone all day or when they get home in the evenings. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want you to take the things that you've learned in the first 3 lessons of this mini critical thinking course and put it into practice. So look at the question below, follow the steps outlined in this lesson, and write a main body paragraph for the first question. So just this one, ignore this one. And then what we're going to do next week is I'm going to take your paragraphs and I am going to analyze them through the lens of critical thinking about whether you have provided a reasonable argument with reasons and strong evidence to support your views. Okay, so let me go through any questions that you have. Nearly, how do I judge if I'm deviating from the explanation? So you would judge that by reading your explanation and thinking critically about your own work. Remember that for the vast majority of your preparation time, you're going to be on your own. For 100% of the time when you're doing a test, you're going to be on your own. So when someone asks me a question like that, like how do I know? It often tells me that they are relying on teachers a little bit too much, maybe. So, someone says to me, how do I know if my grammar is wrong? Well, by looking at it. How do I know if my vocabulary is wrong? By looking at it and deciding yourself if it is correct or not. So that's what I would say about that. Yadu says evidence is also a bit confusing. Can you give me an example of this? I just did. Can the example be from the explanation? I don't know what you mean by that. In order for me to help you, you need to write a question that I understand, please. Abro, Chris, good afternoon. I'd like to know during the exam if I don't have the synonyms to replace a few words from the prompt, the least harmful would be to copy this, right? Yes. Ronak, do topic sentences should be simple only, or only one sentence? Is it a good idea to write this way? I don't understand if this is two separate questions or they're related to each other. Do topic sentence should be simple only, or only one sentence? The answer to that is yes. Is it a good idea to write this way? On the other hand, I believe heinous offences such as terrorism, murder, and rape must be tolerated soft-heartedly at all, and they should be allowed for the strictest punishment, as it will be the true justice. You're making it way more complicated than it needs to be. You're using language, for example, tolerated soft-heartedly doesn't mean anything in English. A native English speaker would never use language like that. It to an English learner, tolerated soft-heartedly looks correct, and it looks advanced, but it's not. So you need to simplify that, all of it. Yadu, how do we know when evidence or explanation? Again, you need to ask me questions that I understand. You're not giving me any context. You're not helping me understand what your actual problem is. I want to help you, but if you just say something like, how do we know when evidence or I don't know what you mean. Official, hey Chris, is it okay to use only one type of sentence, such as future tense, throughout the main body paragraph, or should we use different type of tense? When you should use tenses in the same way as you would use tenses normally. If you're talking about the past, you'll talk about the past. If you're talking about present, you'll use present. If you are talking about the future, you'll talk about the future. You shouldn't go into the test thinking, I'm going to use one tense. That's not how tenses work. You use the tense that it's appropriate to use under the circumstances. Okay, guys, so that's the end of the lesson. If you have any questions, if I didn't answer your question properly or I didn't understand your question, please send me an email. But before you hit send on your question, much like many of you have a problem writing explanations and examples, many of you have a problem even asking questions via email because you don't provide any explanations or examples or context or anything. So when we receive the email, we have no idea what you mean. So think critically about your own emails before you send them, and then we will be much better off, both of us. Yadu, so you asked the question, how do we know when evidence or explanation? Okay, and then now you've said, how do we know the context to use evidence or I'm really sorry, but I don't understand what you mean. Can you give me some examples to help you out with this? Ritanko, hello, Chris. Should the explanation comprise of at least a couple of sentences or just one sentence would be sufficient? You don't think about examples in terms of number of sentences. A really good example could be one sentence or it could be two sentences. A really bad example could be one sentence or two sentences. It doesn't matter how long it is or how short it is, it's whether it's good or not. Sahana, when I state an example, is it okay to put evidence on the basis of my explanation sentences rather than a topic sentence? Because I feel the topic sentence is very direct and short, and so it would be easier to write an example on the base. Well, yes, but as long as your explanation is linked to your topic sentence. If your explanation is not linked to your topic sentence, and then you provide a example based on your explanation, then both of them are going to be wrong. So yes, but as long as that's the case. Gagan, please post this video in the group. It is in the group. It's in the group now. Hey Chris, would we get this video? Yes, all videos that we do live are posted immediately in the group. Okay, so thank you very much, guys. And if you need anything else, send me an email. Bye-bye.